Going to call the regular meeting for November 12th, 2013 of the Ojai City Council and the Ojai Redevelopment Agency, successor agency, to order. Good evening to our staff members and to members of the public that are here. Thank you for being here. As members of the public have heard me say before, without your input during these meetings, we can't do our job adequately, so thank you very much for being here, and we welcome your comments. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Here.
Councilmember Clapp? Here. Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Strobel?
Present.
Mayor Blatz?
Here. And if I could get Councilwoman Smith to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Please stand. After me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have any scheduled presentations this evening, but I had somebody approach me before the meeting. Doogie, you want to come forward? You mentioned something about the VFW?
Yes.
Did you have something that you wanted to just say to us this evening?
Yes, I would like to have a little time. I are also a member also at the VFW Post 11461 of Ojai is Mike Lehman. He's an well, actually, he retired for Lieutenant Colonel. And I'm Fuji, naturally, of the 101st Airborne, 2nd 70 Cav Army. Anyway, I have a invitation for the City Council for our Christmas party that we're having on December 9th. And at 5:30, it'd be happy hour. 6 o'clock is our dinner. So I like.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was Mike.
Yes.
Mike. Good picture of you and your son. Oh, wasn't it nice? Paper the other day, yeah. That was a Gitmo, wasn't it?
Okay.
I was taking it.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you. Nice to see you. Take care. The next item on our agenda is public communications, and public communications is a time when the council can receive public comment on items that are not on our scheduled agenda. These comments are limited to 3 minutes or less. We generally cannot act on any comment that's brought before us. We can act on it if it is deemed to be an emergency item, but we can ask that staff either report back to us or we can place it on a future agenda item. But as a general rule, you're welcome to tell us any thoughts on anything that you want to tell us about that's not on the agenda, and we will hear it and we'll react appropriately. The first one is Deborah Pendry. Deborah, good evening.
Thank you, Mayor Blatz, council members. We just wanted to share, I'm representing the Ojai Valley Green Coalition. On October 9th, we ended our 3-month-long Solarize Ojai Valley program. And we wanted to let the community know that we signed up 11 homes on this program for a total of 61 kilowatts. So that's 61,000 watts of solar energy that will now be coming into our community instead of using fossil fuel energy. So that's great. And then we add that to our 24 watts we did in 2012 for a very short program, and so now we're up to 83, and we hope to do this program again next year. We also wanted to share, we hosted in collaboration with the Ojai Film Festival, the film Harmony, a new way of looking at our world, this past Sunday to a sold-out theater. We had to turn people away. And if you missed this extraordinary film about and narrated by Prince Charles, you can check it out from the Coalition's Resource Center, or when the library reopens, a copy will be available there as the film festival donates all its films to the library after its event. So this is an incredible film about Prince Charles, 30 years, doing an amazing amount of environmental work and social work all over the world. I personally had no idea, and so it was very heartening and inspiring, and we could all use that once in a while. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Next one is William Wyrick. Is this, you want to be on this part and on the commission report?
Yes.
Okay, come on.
That's okay with you.
That's fine.
So as a citizen, I just want to make a comment. There's been a lot of sensitivity on item 1E that you have on your consent agenda. I just want to point out for the record that when you look at the packet material, it's posted on the website, and you click on item 1E, you don't get anything having to do with the residential building reporting requirement. You get the second unit compliance program ombudsman conflict of interest filing. So, please, I note that nowhere in the packet material that's posted on the website, nor on the motion that's in item 1E is the exact date stated. So I would ask the city council, if it's necessary to take it off the consent calendar, to at least, for the record, for the official record, please state publicly exactly what that new effective date is that the ordinance is being amended to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Dennis Leary. Hello, Dennis.
Good evening. The sound really sounds strange to me. Haven't been here for a while, but yeah, something's not working, I don't think. Anyway, I'll use a normal voice, I think. If somebody was stealing money from the city, would you take action or would you look the other way? Our government auditing agency said that the Iraq and Afghanistan wars have cost us $4 to $6 trillion. Sorry, got a mental block there. $4 to $6 trillion. That breaks down to $75,000 for each household in America. If Ojai and its surrounding near neighbors made up
We could hear somebody talking back there. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but if you could. Okay, all right. Thank you. Go ahead, Dennis.
So if Ojai and its surrounding neighbors had 4,000 households, that would amount over the 10-year period of those wars to $300 million, or $30 million every year. And those wars are only a small part of the war economy that's going on today. My point I want to make is
I hope it's going to be a big one.
I don't think I can top that one. The point I want to make is that a war economy is driven by something else, and that something else is the money machine. Wars nowadays are driven by war profiteering, and that means stocks, bonds, dividends, interest. Point I want to make is that if we want to do something to help our fellow human beings, we need to not be part of the war profiteering system. I myself don't take interest on my money, and my suggestion is, and I know you can't do anything now about it, but down the road in the future, my vision for Ojai is that Ojai is interest-free city. Maybe Ojai can set a trend and be the first city in the nation to be interest-free, and maybe even in the world. This is not a popular notion, of course, because there's a myth about interest. We would be a lot happier and wealthier and better off if we didn't have that interest system. The church has condemned it until they were bought off or threatened. Ask your ministers, your priests, rabbis, the history of this thing. Anyway, just a notion to keep in mind for the future and the good of Ojai and our children and descendants. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. River, is it 7-0?
So that
Salvaggio. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Lisa. Okay. My name is River Sauvageau, and I've lived in Ojai since 1978. I've been a business owner here since 1989, running Studio Sauvageau for 24 years. Besides being a business owner, I have been very active in volunteerism in the arts in the Ojai Valley. I worked with Illusions Children's Theater for 10 years, the Ojai Mardi Gras for 20 years, and I've been working with Ojai Day for 19 years. I have my studio in downtown Ojai in the East Walkway of the Arcade, and I've been there for 13 years. We've always had issues with drunks back there. When I first had my studio there, I would find empty alcohol bottles and the flower pots on a regular basis. I've dealt with skateboarders and loiterers in the best way that I could, sharing the space as peacefully as possible, and asking for them to be aware of passersby and to modify their behavior accordingly. It has worked most of the time, and when it hasn't, I've called on the police to come and help move the troublemakers along. Recently, downtown, things have gotten much worse in our area of the arcade. The drunks and the drug addicts have been gathering in large groups with pit bull dogs that they have trained to be aggressive. I had an encounter recently which changed my laissez-faire attitude and helped me to realize that we are dealing with a dangerous situation downtown. I heard someone open the gate that is in the back of my studio, and I went outside to check on it. That is usually where the drunks and drug addicts go to urinate. As I went around the corner in the back of my building, a pit bull dog lunged at me. As his owner and a group of fellow addicts were sitting on the ground on the back of my building, and the man holding the dog was so high, his eyes were literally the color of strawberries. He held on to the leash, I don't know how he did, but did not stop his dog from lunging at me. I was not able to pass on the sidewalk. I called the police, and Patrolman Monty Polito and his partner Andrew responded. I was very traumatized by this experience. As I started sharing my experience with others, I found out that many people in our community downtown are terrorized by these drunks and drug addicts, and that is a huge issue and needs to be addressed by our community. I have asked merchants and community members to write letters describing their experiences and feelings about these drunks and drug addicts. This is a list of behaviors that have been observed regularly and experienced by our community. Open and obvious drug dealing, solicitation of passersby to buy drugs, public intoxication, loitering in large groups, blocking public walkways and blocking handicapped access, vomiting in the bushes and on the walls, littering excessively, verbally intimidating passersby, targeting the elderly and infirm for harassment, urinating and defecating in public areas, having dangerous dogs that are not licensed or vaccinated in public places. The dogs are attacking other dogs and people. Lewd and sexual conduct, gathering in large groups and using loud and abusive language, panhandling aggressively, openly drinking alcohol and using drugs, vandalizing private and public property, bathing in private and public restrooms, violent behavior, graffiti. Many people are expressing that they don't feel safe anymore in downtown Ojai. Becky Enlow, who has worked next door to my studio at the thrift shop for 25 years, says, "For the first time in 25 years, I feel afraid." And Kim Skeeters, the cook at Bonnie Lou's, these are a couple quotes from the letters that I've collected, says, "I have witnessed them selling drugs to children. I have come to work at 5:30 a.m. to complete chaos many times, having to clean up all kinds of disgusting things." Recently, we have had regular patrols by Monty Polito and his partner, Andrew, which has really helped a lot. When they get transferred, who will be there to keep our community safe? The merchants are losing thousands of dollars of revenue. The community is terrified. The drug addicts and drunks are very sick, and downtown Ojai is no longer a safe place. I would like to ask for the community, the city council, and the chief of police to work together to figure out what to do about this problem. I feel that we all have to work together because this is a community problem. Can we please have this as an agenda item for the next meeting?
Thank you, River. Yes, Councilwoman Clapp.
I happen to know the area you're talking about, and I get my hair cut at Delilah's.
Yeah.
And I have to walk through that situation when I go back there, and it's getting worse, and I have to agree, and I agree that it should be agendized. It has become an untenable problem. So
What time of day? Is it all
all
times of day?
daytime,
Daytime and nighttime, and nighttime.
not down there at night.
And I'm
but-
collecting letters, and you wouldn't believe what
Oh,
some
yeah, they're
people
with
have been
pit
through.
bulls, they're loaded, they're obnoxious. It's getting really bad, I
Oh.
agree.
Yeah.
So I would like to see it agendized.
I think it's really important, if you are collecting letters for the chief's benefit, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's really important to know when and where specifically, not to just say, well, we've seen people do this or we've seen people do that. Very specific as to time and place.
Well, you know, a lot of us have called the police when this has happened. And, you know, we call the police and that's when it's happening. And now, mostly, you know, because Monty and Andy have been patrolling regularly and actually coming and standing there and being present there, where right now it's not so bad. But as soon as like they have their days off or something, they come back again. And so right now, you know, we're mostly collecting letters on what has happened because thank God it's not so bad at this moment. But I'm afraid that when we take our attention off, that it's just going to get just as bad. And it seems that there is whatever has come into the valley recently, seems like maybe some heroin, because these guys are nodding out and throwing up, and the behavior is much more violent than it has been in the past.
Thank you, River.
Yeah, we're working on this, if I may comment.
Okay.
So we're working with Hank Bangser. A majority of these are chaparral students as well as the drunks that you make reference to. So we are working on it. And I'm not afraid to tell you, we do have a camera up there and we are filming it. So
Well,
we are
it's
taking action.
It's
and we
not
will-
just chaparral students,
yeah.
I can tell you
No, it's a
that.
mixture. That's what we have on the film,
These are,
right?
no,
But we've made numerous arrests, and then working with the assistant, the city attorney, we're getting
Okay.
stay-away orders as well.
Okay, so you're working,
Congregate around that bench right there.
well, you know, one of the things that has been suggested is to take the bench away, and, you know, I just want to say that rather than take the bench away, which now that they're not there as much, people are actually relaxing there. It's wonderful to see people actually enjoying the arcade, but this is going around and people are very upset.
Yeah.
If I may comment, Mayor Blatz, also, is there anything we could work with the Humane Society when it has to do with the pit bulls? Because that's really alarming.
Yeah, and they have
We
attacked
yeah.
people too.
We've had the pit bulls removed, and then they end up getting them back, but we have, during the test, had them removed. So, but we'll continue with the extra patrols. We are working on it. I am aware of it. And
Yeah.
regardless of Monty or Andrew, we will continue with the patrols.
Okay.
So, Mayor Blatz, am I hearing from you, Captain Kenny, that perhaps in 2 weeks' time or 4 weeks' time, perhaps a report of what the situation was, where we're heading with it?
Sure.
And have it as an agendized item so you can give us the data and what's been happening? That would be great. Thank you.
okay. Thank you, River.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I had no idea. Thank you.
And or if there is anything in the way of policy that we could establish in the city, maybe Mr. Fletcher, you could give us some insights into maybe how we can deal with the situation a little more aggressively.
All right, that's the only speakers cards I have for our public comment. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to discuss anything with us that's not on the agenda tonight? No? Oh,
I think we're still having a little bit of trouble with the microphone, and they're working on it back there, so I apologize, and hopefully everybody can speak up.
okay.
I just want to say that I agree with everything Rivers says, and I've, seen all sorts of problems down there day and night. And I hear the same things from the women in my merchants group too, with the businesses downtown. So thanks for considering. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Meg. Anybody else wanting to address us? No? Okay. We're going to move on then. Commissioners report. Mr. Wyrick.
I just wanted to let everybody know what we take everything you say. Again! It's an audio.
Wow.
Nothing or
Stay away. Seriously.
It does sound like it's working better now.
I get,
though.
yeah, it is working better now. You recall that we had talked about some sanitary district matters last time, and you sort of challenged us to go on the Buildings Appeal Board and the ad hoc committee to go start talking to the sanitary board directly. Well, we did. And Mr. Clark arranged for a meeting with the ad hoc committee and Jeff Palmer and the community development director. And I thought it was extremely productive. A lot of interchange of information happened that Mr. Clark might want to concur or disagree with me. I thought was very helpful. And I broke some ground in terms of the kinds of things that need to be discussed interagency. And I just wanted to let you know that we did take what you said seriously and followed up on it.
Good. Thank you very much. Chair Golden, do you have anything to talk about tonight? We had a wonderful, for those at home that didn't see the earlier broadcast, we had a wonderful workshop with our Hardworking Arts Commission prior to the start of this meeting.
Yes, thank you. I would, and yes, it was a wonderful workshop. Just so the public knows, anyone who wasn't watching that earlier meeting, that there will be a really special reception Thursday, November 21st, from 5 to 6:30 p.m. And this is special because we're going to highlight the work of our students who worked with an artist mentor here in Ojai. We had 3 students who worked with 3 artists. Bernadette DiPietro worked with a young lady by the name of Charlie Coe. Doug Lochner worked with a young lady by the name of Hannah Grant, and John Slade worked with a young man, Chance Lang. And I'll start with Chance. He'll be doing a brief performance piece. He studied the work of Bob Dylan, and he's going to do a little 5-minute rendition of a 20-minute one-man show that he put together under the tutelage of John Slade. Hannah Grant will be displaying some of the maquettes she made. Doug Lochner is a public artist, so there'll be some of her maquettes on display here. And Bernadette DiPietro worked with her young lady in just about every medium there is, and if you've been to Working Artist Studio, you know that Bernadette is just so multi-talented. All of the 3 students will make a short presentation. The public is invited. There will be water and wine and grapes and chocolate and food, and everyone is welcome to come and see this fantastic program and these wonderful artists. So please do come.
Thank you, Christine. Anyone else from any of our other commissions that are in the audience? No? All right, we'll move on to our consent calendar. And I am going to request that we remove item E for further discussion. Okay, item A. What? I. Any other items to pull? All right, so the consent calendar as it stands right now is items B, C, D, F, G, H. And I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, before
Yes.
we make a motion, the minutes, which is B, and the minutes C, there's a note or a memo here at the dais that there's some minor changes.
Correct.
So I just wanted to note that.
All right, that's noted and it'll be incorporated into the motion. Anybody want to?
I'll move. No.
No, I moved, I made a motion.
Oh, okay, is there a
I'll
second?
second that.
All right, any further discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Lara?
Yes.
Clapp?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Strobel?
Yes.
Flat?
Yes. All right, let's take up separately item A first. This has to do with warrants for the period October 11th, 2013 through October 24, 2013 in the amount of $424,809.67. You requested that it be pulled.
Yes, I
Councilwoman
did.
Clapp?
It seems so trivial, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. I was so excited about no color copy overages, but now we're back to $426 of color copy overages. And it just seems like a waste of money. $400 is $400. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Is that what that is, the $438.10 to Rico USA?
It probably is. We have, as Betsy noted at the last meeting, taken action to set our default for black and white
Oh, what
and made a
happened?
point of not having color copies made when they don't need to be made.
Mm-hmm.
But there's, the way the price sets, you have to pick where the break is
Mm-hmm.
on the color. And so you try and pick it at the optimal point so that,
Ah.
sometimes you won't use it all up and sometimes you'll go over.
Well, I was thinking this might have something to do with Ojai Day too.
But I want to assure you, it may well, I don't know. I want to assure you, we took the comment seriously and we have.
Well, that's why I was shocked, so, good, that's fine.
Yeah, this is the Ojai Day.
It's got, I was thinking it might be Ojai Day or whatever, but.
All right, then let's go to item I. Commissioner Lara?
Yes, Mayor Blatz. I just want to point out to the public the Mountain to Beach Marathon. And I have to say, being a cross-country runner and having our deputy just run the marathon, I just am so happy that we're working for the runners to be able to enjoy Ojai. And I'm excited. It's scheduled May 25th, 2004, so if anybody wants to join in, I encourage them to. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Let's take those two items and have a motion on that, and then we'll come back to E. Anybody want to move? Okay.
Second.
Any discussion on it?
Question. The
Yes.
marathon is 26 miles and a half, then is 13? Okay.
26.2 miles. Okay.
All right, thank you,
Yeah, well,
Captain.
roll call, please.
Laura?
Yes.
Clap?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Strobel?
Yes.
Latz?
Yes. Item E is the second reading of ordinance number 832, an ordinance amending Chapter 16 of Title 10 of the Municipal Code to reflect the effective date of the Report of Residential Building Records requirement, amending Section 10-16.03 of Chapter 16 of Title 10 of the Code regarding the effective date for the report of the building records report. I guess, Mr. Fletcher, do you have any comment on that with regard to the effective date?
Well, the reason it's written this way is because there's an anticipation that that date's going to change. So rather than putting a hard date in it and then amending it again, we've cross-referenced the end of the period, which currently is June 30th, 2014.
Okay.
And as you know, as we discussed the housing element, that may be changing. So if we change the date in the housing element and the guidelines, it will automatically change in the code.
Okay.
But right now, it's June 30, 2014.
Okay. Any questions on that? Did that answer your question, Bill?
Could I make sure I understand?
Sure.
So, Mr. Fletcher, as I understand it, the ordinance references the resolution of the amnesty program, and that resolution mentions the date, and so this basically says whatever that resolution says is the date. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, and so the resolution can be changed at any time by a majority of the council, correct?
That's correct. That's
Okay,
correct.
just want to make sure I understood.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions of the council?
I would just like to reiterate that it has been asked by several members of the public that we consider extending and I know we don't want to use the word amnesty, but second unit program, that we extend the second unit program. And so that's the reason we left it for the ordinance change to begin at the end of the second unit program, or if we said amnesty, whatever.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion on item E.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Laura?
Yes.
Clap? Yes. Smith?
Yes.
Strobel?
Yes.
Latz?
Yes. We're now going to move on to the public hearing portion of our agenda. Item number 2 is the approval of a negative declaration and introduction of an ordinance which adds Chapter 14 to Title 5 of the Municipal Code, prohibiting food vendors from using polystyrene-based disposable foodware and requiring them to use biodegradable compositable, reusable, and recyclable food service ware. Mr. Clark?
Thank you. This ordinance was discussed at your October 8th meeting, and at that time, we had proposed prohibiting the polystyrene plates, cups, bowls, trays, and containers. And the council asked us to also include looking at utensils, lids, straws, and other items. And the typical model that's used for those is, rather than banning polystyrene, you require that they use reusable, compostable, or biodegradable products. So we've changed the ordinance from what you saw on October 8th, and the red line reflects those changes. We also changed some definitions. A question did arise at the last meeting on October 8th about the possibility of banning products that are for sale in the stores, such as cups, toys, ice boxes, things like that. And at the time, we weren't aware of any other cities that were doing that, and suggested that maybe that's something that could come in another phase. We did, however, learn after the meeting that in the city of Santa Cruz and the county of Santa Cruz, they have, for about a year, had such a ordinance or ban in place. And so I did interview the person who's responsible for that for the city of Santa Cruz, and include information in your package about that ban. They were a little bit reluctant to enforce the part of their ban that relates to packaging products, for fear that if packaged items that were packaged in some different material were damaged, they might have some exposure to liability. So they were not recommending that other cities adopt that part of it yet. However, we did put the other part out in notices to about 50 vendors within the city that provide food in one way or another. And we actually only got one response back, which was a response in support of the ban.
Okay.
And then I should note that we received a letter from the Surfrider Foundation in support of the ordinance, which you received this evening.
Any questions of Mr. Clark from the council?
Just a quick question. When you said you send out letters, is there any way of verifying that they actually saw the letters, or we don't go out that far?
We sent them to the address on their business license, and so we're assuming that generally went to the right person, but we did not verify it in any way.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
So there were
Councilwoman
no
Platt.
letters in opposition, just one letter in favor? Is that what you're saying?
Well, one letter and one comment in favor.
Okay.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes.
I do have a couple more questions. So the recommendation, as it is in front of us, would be to introduce this ordinance, but if we want to consider this new ordinance they have written up, we would have to reintroduce it at first public hearing, or?
So it hasn't been introduced yet. It's written up to not include the products for sale in stores, such as cups and ice chests and things like that. If you want to include that, I'd suggest that you ask us to write, to redraft it and bring it back in December, and also that you ask us to send notices to the stores that sell those products so that they have a chance to give you input. So you could either adopt it as written now, or you could direct us to amend it in some way and bring it back.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Smith?
I would be prone to adopt it now. I know a cup of noodles, there are some brands that always come in styrofoam. Whether our vendors have alternatives to get a cup of noodles or whatever, I don't know. But I think if we stop the stream where we are right now, that's going to be a huge improvement. And I think the amount of work and the amount of notifying Vons that they can't carry this brand of cup of noodles because their brand has a styrofoam may cause a tremendous problem, both for our stores and our customers, because that's how I read it.
Well, let me
If they
address
carry
that.
cup of noodles in a styrofoam, they can't carry it?
No, they could, if a food is prepackaged in a styrofoam container, they can carry it, according to the Santa Cruz model.
Oh, okay.
And if, you order something from Amazon.com or some other out of city place, and they mail it to you with that product in it, that's okay. But if they sell like a package of styrofoam cups, that would be prohibited for stores within the city limits. Or if they sell styrofoam ice chests, which are pretty common, that would be not prohibited, not permitted. Or if they actually package products to ship away, they would have to use packaging products that are non-styrofoam. And that was the part that Santa Cruz was having a little bit of concern about and not really enforcing yet.
Any other questions? No? All right, this is a public hearing, so I'm going to open it up to the public for comment, and I do have several speakers cards. The first one is from Bill Hickmer. Hi, Bill.
Hello, Mayor, City Council. My name is Bill Hickman with the Surfrider Foundation, and thank you for considering this important item. Excessive plastic waste is an issue that impacts the natural environment and is filling up landfills as well. Tackling plastic checkout bags help to address a top visual litter item that can impact wildlife, while tackling polystyrene can help out landfills and address another top litter item that does not biodegrade in our lifetimes. Surfrider Foundation Ventura County Chapter urges you to support a strong polystyrene ordinance. These polystyrene items are consistently top litter items at our beach cleanups, and foam foodware is the main component, with expanded polystyrene or EPS foam litter from other items such as the mentioned coolers and packaging adding to the mess as well. In California, there are over 80 municipal polystyrene ordinances that are starting to help tackle this problem, so this type of ordinance is nothing new. Polystyrene is the family of plastics that carry the number 6 chasing arrow symbol. It designates what type of resin the item was made from. Many people confuse those chasing arrows with a recycling symbol, but the truth is only 0.9% of polystyrene is recycled nationwide, according to the EPA. The EPS foam food takeout and beverage container, along with other polystyrene items, are typically used once for a very short time, then they become waste and often littered while enduring negative impacts to our environment. Although inexpensive to buy, polystyrene is expensive to clean up. Since the items are cheap, polystyrene items are often used excessively, then thrown away or littered. Many municipalities have to comply with stormwater regulations and have spent substantial taxpayer dollars trying to control, capture, and remove trash, including polystyrene. Surfrider is convinced that actions like this can help long-term benefits to the community, but if this proposed polystyrene ordinance does create specific issues for a food vendor, it's good to see that the ordinance language includes an undue hardship clause. Alternative to polystyrene packaging include recycled plastic, resins number 1 and number 2 that are recycled more often, compostable materials, and paper packaging as well. As the market broadens and more economical bio-based materials and products are making their way into the mainstream, the prices will get even more competitive. Supporting safer alternatives creates more green jobs while can help preventing occupational exposure to styrene, an anticipated carcinogen. Thank you for consideration in this matter. Supporting a strong polystyrene ordinance will make a difference here locally, and hopefully it can be replicated throughout the region. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Bill. Meg Goodwin?
Good evening, Meg Goodwin, 304 North Montgomery Street. I just wanted to say thank you for taking on this issue too, because it's very important, because oil is just too precious to waste by making disposable food containers that are toxic. So thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Deborah Pendry?
Thank you, Mayor Platts, council members. So I want to take a slightly different angle here. I don't think there's any need to reiterate the detrimental effects of polystyrene on the environment around us and inside of us. And I'd really like the thought of our community, the public, all of us getting behind this. I mean, it feels like the council's pretty much already there. So it's getting behind you and supporting this that feels more important and critical right now. So I want to purchase more from the social and psychological angle and the concept the coalition continues to promote, and that is the common good, that which is shared and beneficial for all or most members of a given community, whether they know it or not. There's been an incredible amount of ingenuity and invention since the discovery of oil, but there's also been a lot of, didn't think about that effect, didn't see that coming, who knew? By that time, we common folk are addicted to the convenience, and those making money on a product or activity are not willingly going to let it go, apparently no matter how bad it is. Last council meeting on the discussion of a polystyrene ban, a citizen suggested those in favor of the ban should petition to get the issue on the ballot and then have the city residents vote. Then the city could get back to governance issues at hand instead of spending time on something being pushed by a few people. The idea is great, it's grassroots democracy, but historically we don't tend to go that route when the issue is ultimately about the good of the many over the good of a few. I would venture most people who would say I'm not for a polystyrene ban are not saying I'm for the litter blight for this stuff on our landscape. They are not for the harm of this stuff floating on the water and mistaken for food by birds and water creatures. They are not for the chemicals leached into that cup of hot chocolate their children drink. Most of us just don't know or think about any other way. Change is hard. To lose a convenient, easy way of doing something can be hard. For all intent and purpose, paying an environmental impact fee on the products and services we purchase by getting rid of a cheap option is hard on the budget. I'm the first one to agree that ignorance is bliss, but those of us alive in these times do not have the luxury of I didn't know argument. Those who invented many of our great conveniences of today really didn't foresee how certain products and activities were going to threaten our ecosystems. Think single-use carry-out plastic bags. To govern is to steward. To steward is to govern. We can't separate politics or government from our culture, our social fabric, our environment. Governing is an interdependent ecosystem in its own right. Polystyrene is nasty stuff. Why do we think so many local governments around the world have taken matters into their own hands to curb it? Because we're past the stage of didn't think about that effect 10 times over. We see the effects, we feel the effects. We gotta let go. Push ourselves and the market so something healthier, more environmentally and economically sustainable can emerge for containing our beverages and food, packaging and protecting our goods, and eventually even in the manufacturing of those durable goods. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Very well said. Nan Drake from E.J. Harrison and Sons. Hi, Nan.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I think it's probably all been said, but as a practical matter, we do not recycle styrofoam in Ventura County. What really comes through is highly contaminated because it's normally had food or drink in it and it's still dirty and it couldn't really be recycled. So I am just here in support of what you have decided to do. I think it's courageous and I think it's the right thing. And I'm basically here to answer any questions and also to invite the council members who have never toured Gold Coast Recycling to take the time. I think you would be really amazed. I'm a former member of the Waste Board, and I'm very, very proud of what we've done in Ventura County, and I believe that our facility is probably unmatched in the state for the products that we do recycle. Plastics are hard to recycle. We don't make a lot of money doing it, but it's an important thing to do because it's really, our facility is about diversion. So again, I'm just here to answer any questions. Jim Harrison is here with me this evening also, who could also answer any questions that I might not be able to.
Okay. Hi, Jim. Nan, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What kind of an effect have you seen since we banned the use of the single-use plastic bag?
You know, it's a very good question because there's a very, it's a dynamic industry, recycling. It's very cyclatory. And as you know, for a while, we could recycle plastic bags. And then along came China and the green fence, and they have gotten an environmental consciousness in China, and they decided that they didn't want all of our junk coming over there, and they only wanted true recycled material. So we haven't seen plastic bags in quite a while. So I think, number one, people have gotten used to the idea that it's not a good thing. Other cities have followed Ojai or vice versa. So I think that we have never really seen any styrene foam in our facility, mainly because from the get-go, we're 23 years old, it's never been recycled. It's always been on the no list. So I think you're on the cutting edge and doing the right thing.
Thank you. Any other questions of Nan? No?
I do have a real quick question. You say that you can't recycle the styrofoam because it's dirty from food
Correct.
contamination. If it wasn't, is it recyclable?
You know, if you look, there are major dirty MRFs that take it.
What are they called?
They actually, dirty MRFs. That's
Dirty
when you don't
MRFs.
have a blue cart, you don't have a green cart. They just dump everything in a facility and they hand sort it. And you don't get the same kind of a quality product. It takes them forever to get a load. So if you're going to look at the economics of it, it just doesn't make sense to even try to recycle it. It's very light, and it's normally not clean. So you can only recycle the clean stuff, and you'd have to really search far and wide to find any clean styrofoam.
And what about the people that do the recycling? Is it a hazard to their health?
Again, we don't see it in our facility because it is not
understand.
on our picking lines because it's been known for so long that people don't put it in the blue can.
Any other questions of Nan? Thank you.
Call me, I'd love you to come on a tour.
Yeah, thank you very much. Deborah, did you have something?
I just wanted to add on the recycling end of this that you can't do the food containers, but Astrofoam and Camarillo, I save all of my packaging, whether it's a computer, whatever the case may be. So the clean polystyrene, and there's some other products like polystyrene, the chemical name I can't think of right now, but you can call Astrofoam and Camarillo. I save all this and pile it up in my garage, and when I'm going to go buy Camarillo on my way somewhere, I go over to Astrofoam and take all my polystyrene stuff. So that is one little option.
All right, thank you. I don't have any other speakers cards on this agenda item.
Mayor,
Councilwoman Smith.
Can I ask Bob a question from Surfrider? Is he still here?
Yeah, Bob, could you come forward,
Okay.
please? Or Bill?
Bill, I'm sorry, Bill. Bill, you came up with the plastic bag ordinance. I appreciate that.
Yes.
I am curious. I have heard that the city of Ventura is going through the procedure for a single-use plastic bag ordinance. When can we expect to see that?
Correct, and that is part of a regional effort that was coordinated by Beacon, the Joint Powers Authority, and we expect the first reading with ordinance language in the city of Ventura sometime next month.
Excellent.
Hopefully they'll have their reading of the ordinance language before the end of the year. And as you're probably aware, the city of Santa Barbara recently passed their bag ordinance as well. So the idea is to have something consistent within the two counties, and hopefully this polystyrene ordinance will help spur some of that as well.
One more question. How about the county of Ventura? I can't tell you how many thousands of plastic bags march out of Rite Aid in Miramonte. What's going on? I spoke with Linda Parks, and she was, she just sort of, and she's very environmentally conscious, but she just didn't say it was high on their radar.
I know that Supervisor Bennett is a strong supporter, and I believe he's trying to get it on their agenda as soon as possible. They did pitch into the regional EIR, so they have shown in the past that they want to address the issue, so hopefully it'll be soon there as well. And we're definitely sending them letters and emails and making calls to make sure it's an important issue. So
Because the valley, as I said, but as soon as you go to Miramonte, you could buy plastic bags galore, and then the city isn't then going to have no more. So, I mean, that will be perhaps even extra pushed for the county. And I don't know if the other counties have stores like we have in Miramonte. I mean, they must. They must have shopping
Oh, yeah,
centers.
there's definitely unincorporated areas
That
that
have
need to be
shopping.
addressed. And
Okay.
ideally, it would be addressed statewide. There was a great article in the Sacramento Bee about some of the contributions from Hilux Poly and out-of-state bag manufacturers to the Latino caucus. That's worth taking a look at. But until that happens, the groundswell of local ordinances is really critical to show the state and the rest of the country that this is an important issue that needs to be addressed. So thank you again for your leadership.
Thank you so much for all the work you do. Thank you.
In my discussions with the county with regard to VCOG, the county doesn't really encourage the commercial development, retail development. So they don't believe that they have that big a problem with recyclable, with reusable plastic bags. And most of the places where you have retail, particularly, large box stores, outlet malls and things like that, are within city limits, not in the county. So that's what they have to say about it. I don't have any other speakers cards. Is there anyone else wishing to address us on this item? No? Then I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, I'll bring it back to council for further discussion or a motion.
Mayor? Oh.
Yes.
I realize I was out I wasn't in attendance at the meeting we first discussed it, so that was the reason for my confusion. Now that I'm clear what you mean about selling those foam cups and all, yes, I would be in favor of having those not in establishments in the city of Ojai. Of course, they'll be able to go to Rite Aid and purchase all they want, but at least we won't have them here.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Yes, I would like to add styrofoam cups and plates, disposable foodware into the ordinance, as well as ice chests. I also would like to address the packaging question. I know Santa Cruz is concerned about it, so I did a little research. I've handed out some information on this, and on the first page I've highlighted, now this is from the company who manufactures styrofoam peanuts. And I don't think a company would claim that their product was equally as effective as a styrofoam peanut, because they would be liable if people used it in their goods that they were shipping broke. And it says that it protects products of all shapes and sizes from fine china. These packaging peanuts fill right in where they are needed, cushioning and protecting your products to eliminate breakage. So this company claims right on their website that they're effective to prevent damage. And also, if you look a little further in, how durable is Puffy Stuff? And this is another company that produces a biodegradable peanut. And they say the product is high density for rugged durability. It will not shrink nor allow product migration and damage during shipping. So again, it's two companies that are claiming that their product will prevent damage of your products when you ship with them. So I can understand Santa Cruz's hesitation, but maybe they aren't aware of this. The technology is advanced to the point where you can purchase these and protect your products. I use them in my company, and I've never had anybody tell me their product has been damaged. I've never had a damage call. And also on the last page, I have a cost comparison between a styrofoam peanut 20 cubic foot bag and a biodegradable 20 cubic foot bag. It's $26 for 20 cubic feet of styrofoam and $28 for 20 cubic feet of biodegradable. And when you're talking $2 in a 20 cubic, those bags are huge. They're like this big. So you're talking 0.001 cent, more for what you've packaged. So I would also propose that we add styrofoam peanuts to the ordinance as well. Well, that being said, I have a couple of questions. I am concerned on page 2-7, second paragraph, the second highlighted line 3. It says reusable food. It's the definition of reusable. That's where, what got brought to my attention when Mr. Clark was talking about reusable, that's all you can use. And the definition of reusable, it says that packages or trays, reusable food service wares include food or beverage containers, packages or trays, such as, but not limited to, soft drink bottles, milk containers, blah, 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 blah. So I don't understand. Reusable also includes durable containers, packages of trays used on premises, or returnable containers brought back and forth to the food vendor. I really don't care how this is written. It's too loose. There's a huge, gigantic loophole here, because somebody could say, well, my styrofoam containers or this plastic container is reusable. It just smacks of a giant loophole. I'm uncomfortable with that. I think that's it. Oh, and the other thing in the Santa Cruz ordinance that I thought was very interesting is that there's no provision for enforcement in the ordinance that's before us. And I think maybe the idea of outreach for a year with no consequences is probably the best way to go about it for voluntary compliance. But I think ultimately you need to have some teeth in an ordinance. And I love what Santa Cruz has done. Their fines allow you to, instead of paying the fine, you can buy the equal amount of the fine in recyclable products. So your money goes to doing the right thing, and you can use that money in your business. So I would like to see that incorporated in our ordinances as well. I think that would be very effective, and maybe have that come into effect in a year, or after 6 months or something, after we have a period of time where we can educate. And I believe that's it. I have a question about the City of Santa Cruz contractors. In the performance of city contracts and events, promoters may not provide food and disposable food service ware that contains polystyrene and plastic. I'm assuming that all vendors for any event, Ojai Day, including Libby Bowl events or any event of that sort, and also they state in their ordinance that it's also the schools. Now, I was under the understanding that schools are sort of like an independent entity that we have no jurisdiction over, but in the Santa Cruz ordinance, they also include schools not being allowed to use styrofoam. And I was wondering if you could help me understand why that isn't included in the ordinance. Did I give you enough to answer?
Yeah, my understanding is the same as yours about our ability to regulate schools. So that's why it wasn't included.
Where is that
I thought I had it underlined. Let him go ahead and I will try to find it, because I'm sorry. I do have it in here. I will find it, and I will tell you what page when I find it.
Any other council comments? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Strobel.
I'm going to surprise you and be brief. Page 2-9, Roman numeral 4. I spoke with our city manager about this. It says exemption decisions are effective immediately and are final and are not subject to appeal. And it seems to be referring to the decision of the community development director. And so I would like for you to address that.
Okay. And we have some standard language we can put in that's the language that we have for all other administrative decisions.
Since we're looking up stuff, I would like to recommend that we act as though this is an introduction, that we not approve the first reading tonight, but treat it as an introduction and then bring it back on the next agenda after we've perfected the ordinance for a first reading.
If I could proceed with it, you wouldn't introduce it, then it'd just be for discussion. First reading and introduction are the same thing. So you wouldn't want to do first reading or introduction tonight, correct? What you're proposing.
Well, we can introduce it tonight, which is what we've done.
Okay, introduction of an ordinance and first reading of an ordinance is the same thing.
I don't agree with you on that. I believe that we can introduce an ordinance. The next step is the first reading and then the second reading. I don't believe they must be the same thing. So what I'm saying is, let us discuss it tonight, clean it up, put it on the next agenda for the first reading.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes.
I also agree. I had highlighted right here on 2-12, the provision with the $100. I thought that was an excellent idea. I really thought that I would like to see that also in our ordinance. We're trying to encourage disposable and reusable items. I think we should allow the merchants to use their fine in a productive way. And I just had a question. Looking at the Santa Cruz ordinance, it's very comprehensive and it's well written. It has a lot of items that are just thought throughout and it could be applied. I'm not sure if some items could be applied to Ojai, but I thought it was interesting that they decided to define affordable. What's affordable and use the percentage. I don't know if we could do that here in Ojai, of what is deemed affordable, just to give our merchants some leeway. I don't know if the council also agrees with me in adding that to our ordinance, but I thought that was really clever. Those are the only two items that I would be in favor of adding to the current ordinance that was drafted.
All right, any other comments?
Have you found it, Betsy? No.
Maybe I was hallucinating. I'd like to address the idea of the affordable. Last meeting, I brought forward some cost comparisons, and all of them were within a couple of cents of one another when you were using biodegradable versus non-biodegradable disposable containers. So I'm comfortable with it being left as is as far as that goes. I guess I don't think that we need to go there, but I do agree that I think the fine idea is really clever, and I think that's, like you say, it's very productive. Way to go.
The Santa Cruz mentions affordable as 15%.
Yeah.
So you're suggesting that we need to maybe, that might not.
Oh, your mic.
Oh, you're suggesting that might not be affordable to our merchants?
No, I just think that it just proves that it is affordable. And people that say that maybe other material that isn't polystyrene is a lot more expensive, I think that they made a bold move in showing that, no, we'll even go up to the next step and say, this is what affordable is. But there's a lot of things that, there's a lot of things that are in the Santa Cruz ordinance that I like, but actually didn't see it applying
like beach
to,
toys?
to Ojai. So it's, I like where we're at. I would also be in favor of adding disposable silverware. I think that's, I'm in with Betsy Clapp. I think that's a great idea, so.
All right, for procedural sake, it seems to me that we need to continue the public hearing.
Yes.
For further public input after the modifications as we've suggested as part of our comments come back to us.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, there's a couple issues. I think first, I think we should not only just continue, I think we need to re-notice it, because the public notice was for a ban on foodware.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're considering expanding the ban to the sale or distribution of polystyrene in the city, that's not covered by the public notice we sent out. Further, I just commenting with the city manager, it's likely that our CEQA analysis, the negative declaration that was done for this draft ordinance, didn't cover the issue of the ban of the sale or distribution of polystyrene materials. And so I'm recommending we have to take this back and reanalyze it from a CEQA standpoint. I don't think, I'm just thinking, and I may not be able to get it back for the meeting in December, I guess was what I was getting to. Yeah, I think because, again, as you know, both, as we've dealt with the plastic bag ordinance and the comment the gentleman from the Surfrider Foundation made, the attacks on these by the industry have been through CEQA, and that's why there's the regional EIR being done for Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. And so likewise, we got to make sure that we're very, very clear. It's very foreseeable that the issue of expanding this to the sale and distribution of polystyrene is going to bring out an opposition that you haven't heard yet.
Yeah.
We need to be prepared for that.
Okay, and it also to include the packing peanuts.
Yeah.
And actually, I had a question of Councilmember Clapham. Is it the sale or the use, or both?
Both.
So a business couldn't ship things.
That's going to be hard to monitor.
Well,
but-
and I was going to ask about individuals who sell their
Yeah,
stuff on eBay. for
Exactly.
example.
I mean, you're not going to be able
That's
to.
what, that's my question.
That's like it's
Yeah. So
over
it's not
the
just
top.
not just the sale within the city of the styrofoam packing material, but you're talking also the use of it. You'd like to. Maybe perhaps staff should analyze that and look at the viability of that.
Well, the viability is you can't be dogging somebody like that. You're just not going to have that. It's encouraged the use by vendors in the city that use this kind of material not to, and not have it available. So maybe just a sale. I don't know. What is does anybody else?
I have no idea how
That's a
many.
tough one. Maybe
The
just-
only thing we could do that's reasonable, I agree with you and Betsy, that's not reasonable, is stores where you can buy peanuts in the city of Ojai. And I have no idea where if
Well,
there
it'd be
are
like
any.
Oh,
But
like
they can-
mailboxes,
They
et
only,
cetera,
yeah,
or-
those have to, those basically have to go with the biodegradable
Right.
ones,
You
okay?
could just have it be that
That
way.
we could monitor.
And that would fit within the proposed
Yeah.
prohibition on the sale of the materials. in the
Right,
city.
exactly.
Yeah, and one of the things
Well-
that happens to me in my business is I get stuff shipped to me, and sometimes I get styrofoam peanuts, but I reuse them. And then they get commingled sometimes. Somebody's had biodegradable and styrofoam, and it's all commingled. So they do get reused.
Right.
So as a business owner, if you had styrofoam, but you don't use it, but you happen to have it because you've kept them to reuse, you don't want to get fined for that. So let's
Yeah.
just have it be the sale.
But
of
but
them.
if Attitude Adjustment buys, their
Peanuts to
peanuts
sell.
and whatever, and then sells them to the customers, because they have to sell them because they charge for packaging.
Right, so it'd be
Then those have
biodegradable.
to be biodegradable.
Right, and also in the Santa Cruz ordinance, it has packing peanuts and other packaging materials, and that's a very interesting one. I don't even know where to go with that. Maybe that's for another day. Let's just not go there. But just at least the packaging peanuts, yeah,
Joe,
okay.
does that make it a little easier for you only if it's a vendor
Yes.
who is using peanuts in the city of Ojai,
Yeah.
has to purchase
Biodegradable.
If they're being sold in the city, we're still regulating the distributor of the material, not the user of the
Yeah.
material.
No, well, you see, Attitude Adjustment is selling the peanuts to the
Right.
person who they're charging a fee to wrap up their package.
As a service, that's
Yeah,
part of what they
right.
provide, so they'd be a vendor of it.
Right, right.
So if I could just comment, I think you're doing this, but my advice is to stay within the scope of some of these other ordinances, because they have the staff to research this and develop the ordinance, and we're really just copying what they did. And so I'd hate to innovate, because I don't think we have the expertise to innovate, and I don't think you have yet. But I think the scope that you're talking about is a scope that we could copy and rely on the research that others have done.
On the packing peanuts, you mean? Because it's in their ordinance.
Right. I just said that is within the scope of what
Yeah.
other people have
Oh,
done.
okay, okay.
Yeah, so I'm comfortable with ending it there without increasing our CEQA load or our load on our merchants or anything.
All right, do we need to do anything else?
I think we deem that to be a direction of the council to renotice and bring it back once we've updated our CEQA analysis and the draft ordinance.
All right, and put it on the agenda as soon as possible, after the analysis is done. And we'll keep the current public hearing open, although we probably don't have to, given the fact we're going to renotice.
I think it's good to keep it open so we have one administrative record.
All right. Thank you very much on that. Item number 3 is another public hearing matter. It's revision to the Public Art Code, Ojai Municipal Code, Title 4, Chapter 16, Public Arts. Mr. Clark?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the assistant city manager had to leave, so he asked me to pick up and complete the presentation of this. So what before you is a proposed revised ordinance. You already saw the ordinance from a policy standpoint at an earlier meeting. At the direction of the council, Mr. McClary and I sat down with the Mayor Pro Tem and went through the ordinance. And what's presented to you is a cleaned up ordinance, not intended to make any substantive changes in the policies that are set forth. We just made, both with the meeting and then subsequently, I worked through the ordinance, cleaned up some language, took out some redundant terminology, combined a few sections that made it a cleaner, more hopefully understandable ordinance.
Okay, any questions of Mr. Fletcher?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a comment.
Yeah.
Steve McClary and Joe Fletcher, our city attorney, worked with me on this ordinance to take out a lot of the redundancy and to clarify some of the sections that I felt were not as clear. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate the work you've done, and what we have here is something that I feel comfortable with. So thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Mayor
Yes.
Blatz, I do have a question. I know last time this was introduced, we talked about that we were going to strike the language which gave exception to private schools having public art, and we weren't sure if it's on page 3-6, attachment A, where it says private education institutions which provide general education equivalent to the public school system were exempt. We were talking about possible liability or a potential lawsuit because are we allowed to do that to a private institution? Or
Where are you,
Where are you?
Severa?
on the 3-6 of the ordinance where it says exceptions?
Oh, 3-7?
3-6 on item number 7. It's
That's been deleted.
yeah, that's been deleted. So I was just wondering, I know it came up last time it was introduced that we weren't sure if we'd be running into potential lawsuit.
No, I'm comfortable that we can impose this obligation on the private schools. The only reason that the public schools are exempted is because the state law regarding their immunity from local zoning regulations. But as a private institution, the mere fact they're educational or nonprofit doesn't change their status in terms of being subject to our zoning law. So I'm comfortable with this.
Any other questions or comments?
I would like to thank Mayor Pro Tem for the number of hours she put into clarifying this and making it a more user-friendly document, so
Yes, thank you very
kudos to
much.
you, too.
You're very welcome, and there's still just a few more errors in it, and I am not going to go through them tonight. I will stop by if Mr. McClary is here tomorrow. They're very minor. Some of it has to do with the numbering, lettering of subsections, but we're not going to go there. Basically, I'm really comfortable with this ordinance.
All right, this is a public hearing. I don't have any speakers cards on it. Does anyone wish to address us on this particular agenda item?
Yes.
Yes.
Christine Golden, Chair of the Arts Commission. Thank you, Carlin, and thank you, Steve, and thank you, Joe, for the work on this. I really appreciate it. This, your cleanup is something that we don't have the expertise to do, and thank you so much. We've been working on this for I don't know how many years, so thank you.
Thank you. Well, the Arts Commission put a lot of work into it as well. So thank you for the efforts on behalf of the commission. Anybody else? All right. Then I'll bring it back to council, entertain a motion to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Any
Mr.
further
Mayor?
comments?
No.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move to, I turned the page. It's done in my mind. To accept the determination that under CEQA Guidelines Section 15061B3, a CEQA review is not required because there is no possibility that the ordinance will have a significant effect on the environment, and introduce ordinance number 13-,
835.
835, amending Article 2 of Chapter 16 of Title 4 of the Ojai Municipal Code related to the Public Art Program. By 1, asking the city clerk to read the title of the ordinance, and 2, approving a motion to waive further reading of the ordinance and pass to a second reading.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ordinance number 835, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Ojai, California, amending Article 2 of Chapter 16 of Title 4 of the Ojai Municipal Code related to the Public Art Program. Laura?
Yes.
Clapp?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Strobel?
Yes.
Blatt?
Yes. Thank you again for everybody's hard work on that.
And I'd like to remind you again that there are still some changes we need to make. They are not substantive. They're very minor. Yeah.
All right, next item on our agenda is item number 4, Heritage Tree Designation. Mr. Clark.
Thank you. Ms. McLaughlin will make this presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening, thank you. What we have before you this evening is the Historic Preservation Commission is requesting that the City Council adopt a inventory of heritage trees within the city via resolution. The commission and their subcommittee has spent quite a little bit of time. I remember when I was here almost 2 years ago, they were working through the tree committee and looking at the trees and doing a lot of field work. And so they've had a lot of time and effort. They've conducted workshops. They've refined and verified the information. And at this point, they are proposing to make the final recommendation to you of 12 trees. 5 of those trees are on one site, and then the rest are on individual sites. They have done outreach, and we have done notices to the property owners where these trees are on private property. And currently, the city has a tree preservation ordinance. That ordinance allows the council, via resolution, to create this list. And it's an important aspect that the Historic Preservation Commission feels needs to be done at this time. It's a way of giving formal recognition to the cultural value of these trees. In most of the cases, these trees would already have to comply with our tree preservation ordinance. The difference now would be that the designation would add the requirement that the Historic Preservation Commission will review any requests for a tree permit. And so that is an added layer of review for these 12 trees.
Only for those 12.
Only for those 12. The designation, the heritage designation, one of the things that the HPC did in their evaluation is look at other jurisdiction and determine what kind of criteria to look for with their trees. And they came up with 4 values, and there's definitions in your staff report, but they talk about a specimen tree, whether it's a historic tree, whether it's a landmark tree, or if it's a collection tree. Each of the trees, as you look through the table, will tell you information on the trees. It will tell you which criteria, which value they placed on that tree. The inventory list that you have is in your staff report. There's also photos of each of the trees, and in some cases, a number of trees. If there's any specific questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those at this time. Yes.
Yes, Councilwoman Smith.
Thank you. On 4-9, I was trying to, is this 12, does this add up to 12? Because the numbers go all over the place. I assume that from, you have 1 and 8.
Right.
And 11. Where's 4, 5, and 6?
They had an inventory list that was greater than this, and so they may revisit those as we go forward. So there was we kept the original numbers because there's some history in our files based on those numbers. So they did an original survey of the entire city and had more than 12 trees, and we want to keep some continuity. I know it's confusing right now, and when we do publish a list, I'm sure we can do 1 through 12 or 1 through whatever with the 5
Yeah,
all in
okay,
one.
I got it. So really up to the Valley Oak, which is on 510 Park Road,
Yes.
which is our tree. By the way, folks, that is the beautiful. That is the beautiful valley oak that's in the middle of the ball field in Sarzotti Park. It is glorious. I'm so happy they chose that tree. But these actually add up to 12 trees, and these will be the trees that will have the special designation, which would mean, besides getting a tree permit for work on one of these, the Historic Commission also has to be notified to be sure that all our bases are covered on it and whatever.
Correct. They would
Okay.
review the arborist report on what's being pruned, or if there's a question on health of the tree, or anything that way.
Okay. Okay, I'm very comfortable with that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor Blatz,
Yes.
I just, was there any response to the letter of the owners?
No, not
No.
at this point.
Okay.
And I don't know whether you have any requests tonight for speaker cards. We've not been contacted by anyone.
I don't have any.
I do. I also found the list of trees confusing, and it's like every time I look at this page, I recount it, because I'm looking at 8 designations here, and yet everything is saying 12. So what I'm asking is, I would like a clearer list of the designated trees.
Okay.
And I would like assurance that every tree on that list is still alive and well.
You will note that under the 930 Grand Avenue, it's the 4th one down. There's an A, B, C, D, and E. Those are the 5 trees on the First Baptist Church, and they are a collection, is what the nomination is for. And so it's a collection of 5 trees at that site. The other ones are all individual trees on individual sites.
One more question, Mr. Mayor. Is 409 and 413, are those the trees that are both together? There's 2 trees there. I don't know if 411 is... I don't know if 411 is an address on the Tillaha. Because there's 2 magnificent valley oaks there. One is definitely at 413. Now, I think 409 must be the next house, because there's an equally magnificent one right near
It could be,
that.
and we can
Okay.
look at the photos.
Okay.
You may recognize it from the photos in the staff report.
Now, the biggest tree I noticed, there's a real whopper here. There's one that's 59 inches, and that's at 702 North Montgomery. Am I thinking of Gray Gables, or where is?
City owns the property.
We own it? Oh, wonderful. Thank
702
you.
North Montgomery we do own,
Great.
and it's a specimen tree.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann. I don't have any speakers card on these items. It is a discussion item, so do you have any comments? Yes.
Good evening, Council. Scott Eicher. I'm a resident of the Ojai Valley. On these 12 historic trees, do we know already that they are healthy? Do they have they had a
yeah.
recent, and I'm sorry, I apologize, didn't have time to read the staff report on that, but if that is so, that's fine. And I also want to say that I share Councilmember Smith's opinion of the oak at Sarzotti Park. It's a fabulous tree.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. I believe that that's what Mayor Pro Tem Strobel was alluding to, was that she wanted to make sure that if we were going to designate these trees in a way that we have a current arborist report.
We, if the city already had an arborist report at one point, we would have that, and then we have the information that the HPC members did as they went and did their field surveys. One aspect of one of the trees, I will note that the Valley Oak at 409 South Fox Street, which is at the Ojai Valley Athletic Club, they are working on a arborist report right now. There's some undermining from the Storm Creek that goes through the tennis courts there, and it's started to dig out under the tree. They are in the process of working with an arborist to ensure that they try to protect the tree as much as they can. Of course, they're living items, and with droughts and everything else, we could have a situation where one of these could have an issue. But at this point in time, we have our list, and we think that it's a viable list, and I think it's an important list.
One
Thank
more
you.
question
Yes.
Mr. Mayor. 930 Grand Avenue, so that is a designated grove?
It's a collection, and based on the definition of collection, it's trees in a notable grove, avenue, or other planting. In that case, they're considering it a grove. But
Okay.
they designated it based on a collection. And so there are 5 within that collection on that one property.
Okay, maybe under the notes, we can make a note that it is a collection?
Sure. It does show that it's a collection under the reason for the nomination. It's the, from the right-hand side of the table, it's the 3rd column. We have notes, we have a letter mailed, and then we have notes, and then the reason for the nomination, it does show its collection. We can make that more prominent.
Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
Yes, Councilwoman.
One of the things that I've noticed is the drought is really taking a toll on
Yeah.
trees. It's really frightening. But one of the reasons these trees aren't surviving very well in the drought is because of the way they've been pruned. And this is something that's been concerning me for years in this valley, is that we have people that are pruning these trees improperly. They want to expose the limbs because they think they're beautiful, but the reality is when you expose the limbs, all those branches that are on the understory of that tree that are on those limbs are there for a drought, so when the exterior leaves die off, the trees are protected, and they're not. And I think part of the master tree plan, I don't know what is required in the master tree plan, I haven't reviewed it recently, but I think maybe, is there education involved with that? Mr. Clark, I don't recall, you probably don't either because it hasn't been on the front burner lately, but it is a concern to me that we do have improper pruning, and we can designate all these trees in the world we want, but when they're being butchered, they're going to die. So I would just like to encourage everybody to hire an arborist that knows genuinely how to prune an oak tree rather than...
I would mention that under your current adopted ordinance code for the preservation, cutting, and removal of oak, sycamore, and heritage and other designated mature trees, you do have requirements here. Anything that is over 4 inches in diameter of an oak or a sycamore or heritage tree, if you're pruning live branches, you're required to pull a permit. You're required to pull that tree permit, and we require an arborist report and recommendation based on that.
One thing that I would like to make sure is that the arborist that goes out there and looks at these trees is trained in how to prune an oak tree.
The lists that we typically are handing out is an ISA certified arborist.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I just have one more question. I'm looking at the list, and there's really only 5 nominations right now on private property. I don't know if we can, but actually have a conversation with the owners so they know that their tree is going to is designated. I just want to make sure that we do our due diligence, and advise
Correct.
them that we're going to do that.
I know that throughout the HPC process, they have had workshops and they have been
perfect.
informing the people. We've also had notices specifically sent out to the property owners of these individual trees. As you'll see on the table, the far right corner, we didn't send it to the city. We didn't think they'd be complaining about us designating it. But the 5 that are on private property, letters were mailed out to them.
Great. Well, thank
We've
you.
not heard from them. Now, and I was not at all of the HPC meetings. Rob Mullane was handling a lot of this beforehand, so I'm not positive on what kind of involvement from the public that they had as far as comments, but they did ultimately recommend this to you.
I know, Mayor, I do know that the 2 on the Tillaha, the owners are both thrilled, so.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address us? All right, I'll bring the public hearing to a close. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the public hearing is closed, and we're back to council for further discussion or a motion.
So just to clarify, are we actually adopting this resolution, or are we just tabling it until we hear that because Mayor Pro Tem Strobler has suggested if we could see an arborist report to see if the trees are healthy and alive, so, or how does the process work?
Well, it's your call as to whether you feel comfortable now or whether you'd like that additional information before you act.
I guess the question I'd have is who's going to pay for the arborist report?
Yeah, I think we've done some research, and we have some research in the files, as Ms. McLaughlin said. But if you want us to do arborist reports, if you want us to bring back a cost estimate, we could do that. Or if you want to live with what you've got, we could live with what you've got.
Well, I just wanted to put that out to make sure that wasn't overlooked.
So if you choose to pass the resolution now, we'll still provide the information that you requested after the fact. And if that triggers some different action, I guess we can bring it back and take a different action. Otherwise, you can delay this until we have the information available.
I'm actually comfortable with adopting this ordinance tonight. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't designating as heritage a diseased tree that would be likely to come down. But with our drought cycle, when we do get rain, there's a good chance we're going to lose some of these trees anyway. I mean, it's just such a harsh condition.
The trees.
It's hard. So at any rate, if there's no more questions, I'll make a motion.
Go for it.
Go for it, yeah.
Okay. I would move that we determine the project to be categorically exempt pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, and I would move to adopt resolution number 1348, creating an inventory of heritage trees consisting of 12 trees.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Just a point. We may, if we start to lose trees from this 12, adopt as a possible policy point that we want to keep a list of 12 trees, and therefore we would put tree number 13, 14, and 15 that made that cut into those positions. It's possible, or we could play it by ear. In other words, we want to keep it at 12. Even if we lose 3, then the tree committee would go ahead and look for the next 3. I don't know. Is it something worth considering?
We could certainly take that back to the commission and ask them to address it. I'd really count more on them than our ability to answer that right now.
Okay.
Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a question. We're a tree city, and we're obliged to do a certain amount of our budget every year to trees. Did we do this did we do it in the last budget?
Yes.
And what was, okay.
Arbor Day.
What did we do?
We budgeted the requisite amount of money for planting trees.
Okay.
So we planted trees last year, and we'll plant trees
We're
again
going
this
to plant
year.
trees again this year? Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Laura?
Yes.
Clapp? Yes. Smith?
Yes.
Strobel?
Yes.
Latz?
Yes. All right, moving on to item number 5, we have 2 discussion items. The first discussion item is text amendment of the Ojai Municipal Code, amending section 10-2.404 and section 10-2.3003 of the city zoning ordinance regarding residential building heights, TA 13-03. Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. This item is back for its second reading and normally would have been put on the consent calendar, but I did get an inquiry about the possibility of adopting further restrictions, and therefore it's brought to you on your discussion agenda to consider whether you want to do that. As you'll recall, the ordinance, as it was introduced, provides for design review of single-story residential structures that are in excess of 20 feet, and it lowers the height limit for 2-story buildings from 30 feet to 25 feet, but allows for architectural features in excess of 25 feet and up to 30 feet if the Planning Commission can make certain findings about neighborhood compatibility, solar access, and so forth. So that's as it stands now. The potential further restrictions, the question initially came up with respect to solar height restrictions. And this was something that was discussed a little bit at the Planning Commission, and they noted that in Santa Barbara, there are such a thing as solar height restrictions. So we've acquired those and provided them for you. And basically what they do in Santa Barbara is they go up 12 feet at the property line and then back the northerly property line, and then go back at a 30-degree angle and establish that as the height limit. What that would do for us, especially on smaller lots, is that it would make it nearly impossible to have 2 stories right at the setback on the northerly side of the property. You'd probably have to step the building back to fit within that 30-degree angle that comes from the side. So you could, one option is just to adopt it as it is and hold the further solar access for another day. You could also ask us to go back to the Planning Commission with the solar access height limit and see what they think about it, or you could take it on yourself. Another option that we suggested, or another 2 options that we suggested that you might want to consider, is that rather than having the complexity of this solar height limit, which only applies on the northerly property line, you could just set up a step-back process where second stories have to be stepped back further than the first story, the normal setback for the first story. So, for example, on one side you have to have 5 feet, on the other side you have to have 12 feet. Maybe on the 5-foot side you'd want to set back the second story some amount. That's a second option. Again, if you wanted to go with something like that, I'd highly recommend that it be taken to the Planning Commission first for their input. And then the third option is that we will, at some point in time, hopefully in the second half of this fiscal year, embark on a neighborhood planning process. And I think that the need for further height restriction is more acute in certain neighborhoods than other neighborhoods. And those are the neighborhoods where you have smaller lot sizes with single-family lots, and there's just less space to build a taller building. And so I think that going through the neighborhood planning process would take a longer period of time, because by definition, that's a neighborhood-by-neighborhood process. But that's another way of going at this if you are, in fact, interested in a further height restriction. So that's a bit of an overview, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Clark? No.
Clarification. This is the second reading of this ordinance, and so the motion doesn't need to include having the title read again. We've already done that. And we've already approved a motion waiving further reading. And so the motion would basically end right after TA 13-03, correct?
Well, this is the language that we've typically been using for second readings when we have them on
I
your
know.
consent calendar. So this language works fine if you want to use it. If you want to change it, I'm sure Mr. Fletcher can give you some guidance.
Well, I'm just saying it's redundant because we've already read the title by ordinance and we've already passed it to second reading, so why would we do that again?
Mr. Fletcher, you have a comment?
Not really at this point. I mean, if this has been the practice we've been following, then there's no substantive change. But we could, I mean,
I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm only referring to the staff recommendation
Right.
for the council motion.
right.
So what was your response?
Yes, if I had a comment, not really. I guess the question is, doing this takes care of any issue about waiving reading or anything like that. My question is I was just actually looking at the language we've been using historically, and exactly the same that was
I
done
know
with
that.
item 1E. So there's no harm in
I know, and
following, there's no harm in following the practice.
I have felt it's been redundant for a long time, so tonight I'm saying this is redundant. So let's have, if this is a second reading, let's have it apply just to the ordinance. I'm not going to be making a motion, so anybody
I would
can
ask,
do anything
Mr.
they
Mayor, if
want.
we not change it now, I haven't had a chance to look at the government code section and whether in fact the action on the second reading isn't similar to the action on the first reading. That's why we've always had this language in here. I don't know. So I'd recommend, if you're going to go forward with adoption tonight, I'd leave it alone, leave it exactly as it is, and I will take the time before your next meeting, take a look at the process and clarify for you what the action should be on second reading and adoption.
Okay. This language certainly doesn't hurt anything.
It hurts nothing.
And if there is a reason why it's been in there as a practice, if you could find out for us, and if not,
I will.
We don't need to say it. It is redundant. All right. Any further questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
do we want to hear from the public first?
Is anyone in the public that would like to address this particular item?
No?
No? Okay.
Okay. I went to Mr. Clark because I was concerned about, after I woke up at 4 in the morning thinking about this, that there are a lot of 50-foot wide lots. I talked about this at the last meeting. And I remember when we made the motion that I hesitated because I knew there was something amiss and I couldn't figure out what it was, but I realized at 4 in the morning what it was. Is that when you're in a 50-foot wide lot and the neighbor to the south of you has a 5-foot setback, he can go 25 feet up, 5 feet from your home all the way back, as far as the law would allow. And that would ostensibly eliminate any sun for solar or any sun for a garden. And it was that point that I realized, wait a minute, that the neighborhood planning is going to take a long time, and and also, incidentally, the Planning Commission did mention in their second meeting addressing this matter that they felt that we really did need to have some more specific solar guidelines implemented within this ordinance, something more specific, because it was too vague. And that's why I wanted to bring this back, because I think we do need to address this, that we do need to strongly consider adding a setback requirement on a northern portion of a property. It's kind of hard to say, so that does impede. And I think that the way that Santa Barbara's done it, and I understand it's complicated, but sometimes things are complicated and you have to read them a couple times to understand them, but because they're complicated isn't a reason to reject them. And they've given this a lot of thought, and it really makes a lot of sense, and it really would preserve our neighborhoods and preserve people's right to have sunshine, and also preserve the small town character we all talk about wanting to preserve. It would prevent the that sort of massive eucalyptus and lion house example that I gave last meeting about what happens when you allow this kind of development in a neighborhood with very narrow lots. So I would really like to encourage my council members to agree with me to include this requirement, and maybe I could get some help on the best way to go about that.
Okay, if the majority of the council supports your idea of including the requirement, then we start over on this ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would suggest that we refer it back to the Planning Commission and get their input and start over.
And not so much their input, but I think I would like to request that this be integrated into this ordinance. So can we just do that? Does it have to go back to planning? Because they said they did want stricter guidelines, and these guidelines look excellent, and would there have been any reason the council couldn't include them in our own?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I am concerned that, again, kind of like the polystyrene ordinance, this was an ordinance generally reduce the building height from 30 to 25 feet. We don't know what impact, as applied, this might be on individual properties, because you theoretically reduce your overall height to, in some cases, 12 feet. And so I'm concerned whether we've given adequate notice of this, and whether the state law requires that the Planning Commission hold public hearings on proposed text or amendments before the City Council. I'm a little uncomfortable that we did. We were considering building heights. This is creating basically solar easements or solar setbacks, which is really broader and different than merely building height. So I would think we should take it and send it back.
Okay, but if my colleagues would agree with me, I would like to be with direction to help develop solar guidelines for properties.
And I have one more question, and that is, Councilmember Laura mentioned at the last meeting how we would integrate with the size of lots, smaller lots versus larger lots. The same application wouldn't.
Exactly, it wouldn't apply on a larger lot.
So are we getting into the neighborhood design with what we are intending to do here?
I think I can answer that question. If you just go with the type of solar access height limit that Santa Barbara has proposed, it'll have a bigger impact on smaller lots because they have less room to work with. So they really can't. On a larger lot, you could choose to have a bigger setback if you wanted to have 2 stories, and it would be easy to do. On a smaller lot, you'd probably have to step back the second story and work your way up to stay within the limit. So I think
You're saying inherently in the ordinance, it solves that problem.
right.
May I?
Yes.
Well,
Councilwoman Smith.
number one, we're not sure that a majority of the council wants to even go on to suggesting that on the north side it gets stepped down. If the majority, and I think somebody should more or less make a motion to include that and see what we have. If the majority say yes, I most definitely would want it to go back to the Planning Commission, not only for legal reasons, but for their input, et cetera. So my other question is, when we do get around to the neighborhood plans, obviously bigger lots may not be as effective. So right now, let's say if we went with this northerly thing, and once we went with neighborhood plans and the city council approved them, that would supersede these anyway, right? Because then we would have plans for very large lots that, of course, could be different than the very 50-foot. Am I correct in that?
I would say that we haven't really had a full discussion of what the scope of the neighborhood plans will be, but one of the things that could be included in the scope is a discussion of the building envelope on a neighborhood-by-neighborhood basis. And if that, in fact, is part of it, then the answer to your question is yes.
All right, well, I would like to just get an informal poll of the council at this point as to whether or not we want this to go back to the Planning Commission to take a look at this solar easement issue on the north side of properties. Councilman Smith?
Yes, I would.
Mayor Pro Tem Strobel?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Laura?
Yes.
Councilwoman?
What?
Yeah, okay. Then I think what we do is we would like to address that issue of the solar easement, or light easement, or whatever we're going to call it, and have it go back before the Planning Commission for public hearing and their input. So at this point, what do we need to do?
It'd be a motion then to refer the matter back to the Planning Commission with direction to develop policy language regarding solar access standards.
Would someone make a
So
motion to
moved.
that effect? Second?
Second?
Okay, roll call, please.
Laura?
Yes.
Smith?
Yeah.
Clapp?
Yes.
Strobel?
Yes.
Flats?
Yes. All right, moving on to number 6, Aliso Street and Matilaha Street pedestrian crossing improvements. Mr. Clark?
Thank you. The very brave Mr. Grant will step forward on this one.
Hello, Mr. Grant.
Good evening.
Welcome, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm going to grab the keypad. Well, again, good evening, and while Ron is setting it up, it's not critical at the front here anyways, but once we're ready to go to it, it'd be helpful. Carolyn, if you could key that up for the view, appreciate it. And I just want to remind the council regarding these pedestrian crosswalks that staff was responding primarily to the goal, I think it was one of the top 10 goals of the city council, was to implement the complete streets policy and projects, and also to improve the pedestrian crossing safety within the city. The Complete Streets Committee has been focused on making streets more pedestrian and bike friendly for many years now, and they've identified some primary concerns, and those were sidewalks along the core part of the city. So that was along Aliso Street is a primary core part of the city. So as part of that, the paving project coming up that we've already put out to bid and we plan to award it in December includes sidewalks along the south side of Aliso Street between Signal Street and Montgomery. There's a few gaps in there think there's about 3 gaps right now, so we'll fill all those gaps on the south side. On the north side, from Lyon over to Montgomery, on the north side of Aliso, there's 1 gap left, and that'll fill that as well. So we're getting there. We're starting to have some complete streets as regarding the sidewalks anyhow. And one of their focuses also was the farmers market pedestrian crossings, the safety of those crossings. And neighborhood traffic calming in general has been a focus of them as well. I should mention the Aliso neighborhood has been an area which has frequent complaints about traffic calming and speeding. I think it's recognized by some as a cut-through street. People coming from the northeast part of the city, when they come down, instead of getting on Ojai Avenue or Matilla, it's an easy cut-through street. And I think that might be the reason for some of the speeding on that street. And in response to the city's council's goals, the staff went out and found a grant, a TDA grant for 2012 that provided for improvement of the farmers market pedestrian crossings on Matilla and Aliso, and also on the Ojai Avenue area. The Ojai Avenue area is a study only. The ones for Matilla and Aliso are improvements. We went out and requested proposals for consultants to help us with the improvements. And we chose Hassan Associates, which has been working in Ventura County for over 40 years. And the principal of the firm is Mohammed Hassan, and he's here tonight. Thank you, Mohammed. And he's got a couple experts in the traffic area. One of them is Nazir Lalani, and the other one is Richard Herrera. Nazir is recognized nationally. ASC, the American Society of Civil Engineers, uses him as a webinar trainer, and he's written numerous publications on all kinds of traffic areas, including pedestrian improvements. So in an effort to try to make sure that we avoided some of the mishaps of the past, I think bulb outs in Montgomery Street might come to mind. It was our main focus to avoid such problems that have happened in the past. So staff did significant outreach efforts. One of the techniques we used is we couldn't go through the complete improvements, but we did use temporary curb placements in the street and put up signs. And that was, I think, a great technique to spur interest in the improvements. We've got a lot of attention from those curbs out there, which we may not have otherwise. And we did send out flyers to all the neighborhood on Lisa Street, up Line Street, and the other sides of Montgomery, all through the Matilla Street area. We put an ad in the OVN, and there's an article written in the newspaper as well. And we had an outreach public workshop where we try to get people involved in helping the design. All those efforts were helpful. We did also, I should mention, contact the police, and they're very supportive of the police departments of the safety and traffic calming effects of the crosswalks. And the fire department actually was contacted. We did a lot of test driving with all kinds of vehicles, larger vehicles, but in the end we just contacted the fire department, and they test drove this as well, and they felt that the way it is right now with those curb extensions, which I should mention isn't our recommended final approach, but they felt that it's fine coming down Aliso and turning onto Lyon. They felt that was fine. They felt it was also fine coming down Lyon and turning onto Aliso eastbound. That's the tighter one. I kind of brought up to them, well, I feel like that one's a little tight. And they said, yeah, it's a little tight, and we could use an improvement on that if you guys can do it. So that's an area we're trying to still work out a few bugs on. The other comments we received during these outreach is that it was too massive, that it should be downsized. In response, we've tried to reduce the amount of signage and tried to improve reduce the size of the islands and so on in the design. The aesthetics were questioned if we could improve them. Originally, we proposed stamped concrete. We now have landscaped islands. We'll have, it happens so there's irrigation available there that hasn't been used in the city parking lots for some time. So we'll extend that up to the islands. And we should have better overhead lighting. And so we've contacted SCE about rotating the lighting to 90 degrees to be over the pedestrian crosswalk. Also, there's too much signage, that it was blightful. So we've looked at reducing the signage to the minimum on these crosswalks as well. And I think there were some general comments about overkill and where is the personal responsibility, and that many may not use this. And I think this was discussed in Complete Streets and how it could be dealt with. And the primary response was a lot of these improvements for Complete Street are oriented towards what they call is 880. the 880 concept in complete streets, and that means are these improvements, when it comes to bike improvements or pedestrian improvements, useful for the very young, the 8-year-olds out there, and are they useful for the 80-year-olds? And that's where these might come in handy. It's probably very true that a spry middle-aged person in their 50s or 60s might be doing just fine on these, crossing the street at any point. But if you had, if we all will reach at one point or another an age where we might need a walker, or if we want to send our kids to use one of these crossings at 8 years old, I think you might say that the safer place to go would be one of these pedestrian crossings. And then also there's questions about, is there other ways to calm the traffic? With trees in the middle of the road was a very recurring theme that we used to have a lot more of those in the city of Ojai. And that's something we're looking at more closely. But I should mention this grant was for a pedestrian crosswalk. That's what these were oriented for, not traffic calming. They're interested in pedestrian bike, this type of grant that we're able to obtain. And there's some general comments about it being a distraction to motorists if they would be distracted with a crosswalk instead of looking for pedestrians. I should mention it wasn't all negative. There was plenty of positive comments. There's a lot of people supported the safety features of calming the traffic, which is really a secondary issue. And then the safety side of the pedestrian crosswalk certainly is safer than not having one for people trying to cross the street, with an emphasis of that 880 concept. After that was all said and done, the Complete Streets Group did a final review of it, the committee last week at the Wednesday, and they supported it unanimously. And the Planning Commission also reviewed it last Wednesday night, and they unanimously supported this concept. And the design is up on the screen. I do have copies here, if that would be helpful, and be glad to answer any questions. And I should, as a final point, I'm sorry, mention that the recommendation was to authorize us to proceed with construction with any council recommendations incorporated. And I would also like to add that we'd like to recommend that you allow the Public Works Director, myself, to make adjustments to the design before construction to improve the traffic flow. I think we recognize that it's really the islands on both Aliso Street and also on Matilaha. In Matilaha, for instance, when you leave the parking lot and you drive, we used to have a sign on one side of the crosswalk, not the other. That's pretty tight. I think we all recognize that, and we're not sure if that will stay. And on this crosswalk, we have two small, let's see if I can move forward here. This is actually that was before the outreach, and this is after the outreach. You can see we now have two very small islands protecting the refuge area in the middle. And so we've really downsized everything, including the signage. And we still, you can see a guideline that comes from up on Line Street. If you're going to go south on Line Street and take a left, which would be eastbound to Aliso, there's a guideline to help you to make sure you stay out and don't cut it too short. But we still might be able to improve that a little bit more. And the same thing with leaving the parking lot. It used to be to leave the parking lot on the east side. You could make a left-hand turn to go westbound on Aliso. We've got that now, so you can make the left on it. And we like to make sure we tune that up.
You can make the left.
And you can make a left. So we eliminated the no left turn, and we eliminated the island there. Now it's just striping with a very small island at the pedestrian crosswalk. And sorry, going back to, and this is the final proposed recommended design for Matilaha. I think if anybody's been out there, when you leave on the east side, where it says, well, they both say driveway, but the easterly driveway, when you leave and head westbound on Aliso, that's very tight to hit the one island that's out there, which is where we didn't have the sign before. So it's questionable whether that would stay. So that final recommendation would handle that. Now, these won't be built until the middle of January. We go ahead and fine-tune these minor issues with the islands out there with your approval. And that would end my staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Any questions of Mr. Grant? Yes.
Suggestion that actually the Planning Commission, I was the liaison at, I was asked by particularly one of our historic commissioners that if we do this, are we going to have, let's say, where shall I put it, on Aliso, let's say, the west side of Aliso, before you would come to the crosswalk and all, a 10-minute loading zone, because this particular woman is the over 80, and what she would like is to buy her produce and all, put it in bags, leave it at a vendor, go get her car, pull up, and basically just load it up and leave. And I thought that was very reasonable and would be very accommodating for people who did a lot of shopping and may have parked far away, to have a 10-minute loading zone. Just, let's say, on Aliso, west of the, there's one drawing here where I could see it where it would be number 8 or something, like to the west of that driveway, that when you leave the lot.
And that comment came up during the outreach meetings, and we did mention that didn't directly relate to the crosswalk, but we certainly could look at that issue. The parking lot is closed during the farmer's market. So I think as you're saying, the bigger driveway cut to the left-hand side, which is the west side, we could have a sign there that just says 10-minute parking. Some people want it to be strictly pick up and drop off. So we could certainly create a sign like that and ask Cynthia Corman, that manages the market, to put it out for us.
Yeah, it would be a loading zone, right? The other thing is, if the money was all for the crosswalk, how did the money that we're doing to expand the sidewalk, so we have a contiguous sidewalk on Aliso on the south side, is coming just from our regular funding?
There was 2 of the 3 sidewalks on the west side were funded when there was the property right next door at 217 Aliso. There was a sliver of property sold to them for their development, their proposed development. They never went through with it. So they paid the city the $5,000 is what it's going to cost for those 2 sidewalks. The other 2 are being funded under the capital improvement program.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions
I have a question. On Matilah, those poor, pathetic plum trees on that crosswalk. I'm on Ojai trees, and those things don't grow. Is there any plan to change that?
We plan to trim them more than they are to help expose the pedestrians that might stand behind them. So we want to try to keep it clear, 7 foot high. And in some respects, it's ideal that they don't grow too much. You don't want a wide trunk that blocks the pedestrian. So that's some respects ideal. We could eliminate them and go to some low-lying, some vegetation, some shrubs. I think the trick of that might be to get irrigation out there. I'm not sure if we have irrigation.
There's no irrigation. So apparently they weren't planted properly in the first place. They're never going to thrive. And there's also a signpost in one of the planters that has the tree in it, and the sign is burning the one tree. The one tree is on the northeast side, is darn near dead, and it's because that has a metal sign up there, and the heat from the sign is killing the tree. Is there a way we could at least move that sign?
I think they may have been trying to discourage the growth of the tree at the time.
Yeah, I think so. Those are poor trees. They're pathetic. Oh, well.
But we
Just thought
certainly
I'd
could take
ask.
a look to try to promote the growth, but we do want to try to keep them trimmed 7 foot up. That's the recommendation.
They're doing that all on their own. Haven't grown an inch. They're sad little trees. Sad.
Any other questions of Mr. Grant? Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Grant, before you sit down, you had requested that we add to the motion to authorize the Public Works Director to make design revisions to increase traffic flow. Give me that wording again.
Yeah, I would just say, I think that worked, to allow the Public Works Director to make adjustments to the design before construction to improve traffic flow.
Improve, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a discussion item, and I do have some speakers cards. The first one is from Richard Bradley. Hi, Richard.
Hi. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Richard Bradley, and I live at 410 North Fulton Street. I am here to support the project. I really like the improvements as they're laid out on the street right now at Aliso Street and Lyon. I walk around town for transportation and exercise just about every day, and that particular intersection has been of much concern to me, especially during the farmer's market. Things, situations, especially when people are loading up cars and the need for a loading zone there creates a little bit of chaos at times, and to slow cars down would be a great thing. And I also got to say I was very pleased to see temporary improvements out there, because I look at these drawings and sometimes I can't understand them, but I was just so pleased to see that your staff went out and put some temporary improvements that really helped me be able to understand what was going on. I walked through them and I felt safe. I also want to say that I attended the last Complete Streets meeting, and it was a joy to be there. It was a group of people working together really well, and boy, they were innovative. They had some fun doing it, and they were doing good things. I was very pleased with it, and I look forward to attending more of those meetings.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Meg Goodwin? Hi again, Meg.
Hi again. My only concern is the two islands in the crosswalk. When there's two raised islands, it makes it a little bit constrictive if you have three or four people going in both directions. I would suggest maybe just the west side of the crosswalk have the raised island, and the money from the other island could maybe go into a fund to put lights on the crosswalks downtown sometime. Just lights in the streets like we have by the library would be nice for the crossings at Montgomery and in the middle of the arcade. They're both still kind of scary in the dark. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Bob Daddy?
Good evening. I'm with Complete Streets. What we wanted to do in the inner core with Complete Streets is we needed some pedestrian artery pathways. We didn't want to do all the streets. We don't want barricades everywhere. But there's got to be a couple of streets where people can push their baby carriage. There's got to be a couple of streets where we can do the east, west, north, south, where they can get all the way through town, where they can get downtown for have access. When you have the Lion Street intersection there, we haven't had a crosswalk there, never had a designated crosswalk. And with that, Sundays, we have people that have a festive atmosphere. They walk around, they're not paying attention. But even when that's not there, those cars are smoking fast. We had a couple people at Complete Streets talk about some of the things. That is really one of the interior speedways that we have. The next is Matilahaw. The interior speedway there at Aliso runs you from the east end. You get off, you blast down Lion Street, you hang a right, you go all the way across, you hit Bristol, and then you can make the back way and you're out of town. You bypass everybody, and you get to zip in past Ojai Avenue. And we have several of those. And I think with pedestrian fatality, we've had it Park, unfortunately, which is the fastest portion of the city as they come in. We've had a fatality at Coffee Roasters. We've had a fatality with the 16, the transit bus. We've had a number of pedestrians hit. We had a couple hit last year at the crosswalk at Clough Park. We had some kids hit in front of the high school in a pedestrian death there, Dr. Favre's kid.
That was 20 years ago.
Well, no, I understand that, but I'm just saying, over 20 years a town this size, that's a lot of pedestrian deaths. We moved the crosswalk at Pyrie to the other side. I work with Doug Breeze on that. We have changed a few other crosswalks. And the valley traditionally has a lot of problems with the crosswalks. We had a pedestrian, it's a bicycle death at the Ojai Springs Car Wash. We've had some pretty big hits at Woodland. We've had it down at the Little Market. We had one yesterday and at the crosswalk coming into Casita Springs. People are inattentive when they're going through. They're just going too fast. And these different barricades will really give a level of safety. So I would urge you to allow our city engineer. He's done a spectacular job at modifying Fulton Street. Came out well. The Y came out well. Some of the other projects have come out well, and I'm sure that this one will come out well too. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. James McKinnon?
Good evening, Council. I live at 217 Aliso Street. This is all happening directly in front of my house. First, I was very opposed to, I'm like, oh, they're going to take out our put a sidewalk in and take out all our plants. And then I realized I have a 2-year-old daughter that every time I try to teach her not to go in the street, every time we leave my house, we have to go in the street. So I've embraced the sidewalk with quite a bit of enthusiasm and do whatever I can to help and support the project. So I also probably cross both intersections, both Aliso, coming to that area, and also on Matilaha, probably more than most people. My office is right across the street on right above Matilaha Mail Call, and so I'm walking through the parking lot several times a day. And when I come home, I spend the afternoon with my daughter playing in our front yard, and we see all our neighbors crossing the street constantly, nonstop. And we've watched a lot of our neighbors come out after their animals have been hit by cars that are flying through that street. I stand out there, have to clap, slow down, more than I like to do. Especially we moved here to be closer to the farmers market, which we love and absolutely enjoy having it. It's just such a pleasure having that right next door to our house every Sunday. But we moved from La Luna when my daughter could start walking because that street was a highway and people would fly. And to find that it's really not too much different. Maybe there's a 10-mile-an-hour difference from where our house was, but that's still quite a bit of speed. So, and I grew up in a small town as well, and I still think that, I had one of our neighbors was out, and we were kind of speaking about this, and she goes, "Nobody's been hurt on the farmers market, and should we wait? You shouldn't wait. One person hurt is too many, and if it takes a kid, then that's a child, and which is nonstop families on bicycles. I mean, nonstop, all afternoon, every afternoon. So I think this is a brilliant idea. I think it can do nothing but bring safety and at the same time, that is a very popular place on Sundays where there's tons and tons of tourists and guests that come up. And, I think to put our best foot forward is a nice thing to do. So thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you, James. That was the last of the speakers' cards. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to us? No? Okay. I'll bring it back to the council for further discussion or a motion.
I have no questions, and I'm not sure if anyone else does. If not, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
Anybody? Okay. Let's authorize the Public Works Director to proceed with improvements with construction of the attached design with council's recommendation incorporated, and go ahead with the state grant, right? Do I even need a motion here? Much.
Yeah, I think you need a motion, and there was also the suggestion that the Public Works Director be given authorization to make adjustments that you might want to add to that motion.
Well, that's what I just said, authorize the public, to proceed, here we'll try. Okay, Public Works Director to design, change design before construction to improve traffic control. Okay, thank
All right,
you.
do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Laura?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Clapp?
Yes.
Strobel?
Yes.
Slats?
Yes.
Sorry about that.
All right, we're going to adjourn as the Ojai City Council, reconvene as the Ojai Redevelopment Successor Agency, the RDSA, and I'll entertain a motion on the consent calendar.
Moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Laura?
Yes.
Clapp? Yes. Smith?
Yes.
Strobel?
Yes.
Blatz?
Yes. There's no discussion items on the redevelopment successor agency agenda, so I'm going to adjourn the redevelopment successor agency, reconvene as the city council, and ask the council members if they have any reports this evening. Councilwoman Smith?
No.
Councilwoman Clapp?
Yeah, I drove down 33 today, and after Casitas, when I got on the freeway, there was so much trash on the freeway, I couldn't believe it. I hadn't seen so much trash in years. So I talked with Steve Offerman down at Bennett's office, and he sent me, which I left in my car, I'm afraid, information about adopting a highway, because as I drove along, I realized that nobody had adopted the highway. So if you're so inclined to go pick up and trash and adopt the highway. Ojai City Council adopts the highway. But I encourage anybody out there to adopt the highway because it's looking really bad, and it's pretty embarrassing when people are coming into town for the film festival and we look like everything's trash everywhere. It's really bad. Aside from that, I have nothing to report.
All right, Councilman Lara?
No.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Strobel?
Mayor Blatz and I met with Hannah Beth Jackson last week, had a very good discussion, and I think the office is going to help us out a little bit, maybe with the Montgomery property and some other questions we have, so that was really good. That's it.
And I want to thank Mr. Clark for doing a summary to send to Senator Jackson. We did have a good meeting with her, and she asked for that information, and you were very quick getting it out, so thank you. It was our discussion centered around a number of issues, one of which was the redevelopment agency and the sweeps that the state had done. And one of the things we discussed was that because that property had been purchased with redevelopment funds, that we certainly hoped the state wasn't going to try to take that property. That was one issue. That was one comment that we discussed.
I think the three things she had things that she was promoting, but one of those things really doesn't work so well here in Ojai. But the three things that I was promoting was some help on maybe grant funds to update our natural resources to help with verify that our RENA number should be lower. Retaining the Montgomery Street property, and maybe some funding to help update a traffic study through the 33 corridor that includes Ojai, and because we can't do an updated traffic study all by ourselves. Right. And so we were looking for some kind of funding or a joint effort. So
I have a real quick question for Mr. Clark.
Yes.
You went to the SCAG meeting, the RENA committee for RENA reform,
Yes.
and there's time for more input, and there's going to be more meetings?
There will be 5 more meetings. Let's see, I think the 15th is the final day for comments on additional topics that they'd like to discuss. So let me just step back. SCAG appointed a committee to review housing element and RENA legislation and administrative proposals.
Mm-hmm.
And they solicited input from all the members of SCAG. We made some suggestions, and they've kind of organized all that into 5 meetings to discuss. And one of the issues which we suggested is that smaller cities have some flexibility in terms of the density of housing that they're required to put on their overlay sites because of the unique pattern of development that we have and the density that's required by the states too much.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, they're open until the 15th to receive more legislative suggestions. And then they'll have this series of 5 meetings, and they'll end up making recommendations to the overall SCAG Board of Directors after that.
And when's the next meeting?
I have not heard, I don't think it's been set
So you
yet.
don't have any schedule in the next 5 meetings, you just?
There are 5 meetings, the first one would be in December sometime, and they go all the way through June.
Oh,
But the exact dates haven't been set yet.
okay.
Any report, Mr. Clark?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that it's very important that that we, since we have staff that cost so much to fund, that we do the things that are necessary to make our staff productive. And one of the changes that we made this year in our budget was to have an equipment replacement fund. And the whole goal of that is not to just hold everything together with baling wire until we can't possibly do it anymore, but instead to replace things on a scheduled, planned basis so that our crews can be productive. And so the one item that we had in the equipment replacement fund this year was a lawnmower. And I just want to report that we received that, and that according to the crews, we're able to mow the lawns in about half the time as we did before, and we do a better job. So either they're having longer coffee breaks or we're getting more productivity. It is, yes. So if anybody wants a demonstration, I'm sure the crews would love to show you how it works.
Anything else?
That's it.
Mr. Fletcher?
Nothing, sir.
Well, welcome back, Chief.
Thank you.
Yes.
It was hot. It was 102 degrees, 85% humidity, so.
How did you do?
I came in 15 for, I
Very
just did the
good.
half marathon, but I came in 15 out of 75, so I'm on
Great.
Wow.
Excellent.
So, but I'm glad it's over. It'll be turkey next year, so. Good.
Good.
Other than that, Citizens Academy is graduating next Thursday at 6 p.m. 18 people made it through, and Mr. Mayor, I understand you'll be there?
Yes, I will. The 21st?
20, yep, that's it, yeah.
Yeah.
That's really all
So,
I have.
yep, I look forward to being there. I was there last year, and I look forward to being there this year.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see.
You know, before we move away, I did want to mention that Mayor Blatz and I had an opportunity to speak with Sheriff Dean and Gary Pintas, and they had wonderful things to say about you, and they also showed photographs.
I heard that. I heard that.
It was nice to, always nice to see the sheriff. And is it under Sheriff Gary Pennis? Is that?
No, he's assistant sheriff.
Assistant Sheriff, okay, all right. We have the fire chief back there. How are you? You have anything for us?
Nothing to report today.
Okay, thank
Crossing
you.
your fingers that we have no fires, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Pray for rain, everybody, please.
Well, thank you for attending these meetings. Feel free at any time that you have anything you want to impart to us to just ask. Okay, thank you very much. Rhonda, anything tonight? No? All right. We have a closed session that was scheduled. It's a conference with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code Section 54.956.9D4, initiation of litigation in one case. And it's recommended that that closed session be rescheduled to a future date when it's ready for further discussion.
Yes.
So do we need a motion for that, or can we just do
Just
it?
you give us the direction, we'll do
Okay,
that.
so we would like to have that put on, we'll reschedule it to a time when it's ready, at your discretion when it's ready, okay? And then we also had continued a public, a closed session from last time, I thought, with regard to the evaluation, but I didn't see that it
Yeah.
made the agenda.
We had some miscommunication, so we didn't get it on the agenda, so we'll put it
Okay.
on the next one.
All right, and thank you, and we did receive your memo, thank you very much. I believe that was responsive to what the council had requested, so, thank you, and we'll sit down and discuss it.
Thank you.
Next meeting.
And if you have any further feedback from that, let me know.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for taking care of that. It was very good.
Anything further to come before us tonight? Hearing nothing? We stand adjourned. Thank you.